Commander Thane stood on the bridge of his warship, looking at the small blue planet spinning slowly in the darkness of space. Earth looked peaceful from here, with white clouds swirling over green and brown land masses. But Thane knew better than to trust appearances. Every world looked peaceful until you got closer. How long until we reached their atmosphere? Thane asked his pilot. 2 hours, Commander, came the reply. The pilot was a young Keth warrior named Marcus, eager to prove himself in his first capture mission. Thane nodded and walked to the tactical display. Red dots marked human settlements across the planet's surface. Most were clustered together in large groups, but some sat alone in remote areas. Those isolated spots would be perfect for a quiet capture. The Keth had conquered 47 worlds in the past century. Each time the pattern was the same. Study the target species, capture a few specimens, learn their weaknesses, then send in the full invasion fleet. It worked every time because most species panicked when they realized they weren't alone in the universe. "Sir, we've identified the target," reported Lieutenant Vera, his science officer. She pointed to a small cluster of buildings near a large body of water. "It's a research station. Only 12 humans present, minimal security systems." Perfect. Thane preferred scientists as specimens. They were usually smart enough to understand their situation but too curious to simply shut down. A good scientist would keep talking, keep asking questions, and accidentally reveal useful information about their species. "Begin descent." "Silent approach," Thane ordered. The ship's cloaking field shimmered to life, bending light around the hull until they became invisible to human sensors. The Keth had perfected this technology centuries ago. Most primitive species couldn't even detect their presence until it was too late. As they dropped through Earth's atmosphere, Thane studied the intelligence reports on their target. Dr. Emily Watson, 34 years old, marine biologist specializing in deep-sea creatures. She had published several papers on adaptation and survival in extreme environments. Ironic, considering her current situation. The research station came into view as dawn broke over the horizon. It was a simple collection of white buildings connected by covered walkways, sitting on a rocky coastline where waves crashed against black stones. A few small boats bobbed in a protected harbor nearby. "Landing zone secured," reported Marcus from the pilot's seat. "No hostile activity detected." Thane almost smiled. There never was hostile activity at this stage. The humans had no idea what was coming. 6 Keth soldiers moved silently through the station's corridors. Their armor made no sound, their weapons charged but set to stun. They found Dr. Watson in a laboratory, bent over a microscope, completely absorbed in her work. She wore a white coat and had dark hair pulled back in a simple style. When the soldiers surrounded her, she looked up with more curiosity than fear. That was unusual. Most humans screamed or tried to run. "Dr. Emily Watson?" Thane asked, stepping into the lab. She nodded slowly, her eyes taking in every detail of his appearance. The blue-gray skin, the tall frame, the advanced armor and weapons. She was studying him just as intently as she might study a new species of fish. "I assume you're not from around here," she said calmly. Another surprise. Most humans either begged for their lives or demanded to know what was happening. This one was making observations. "You will come with us," Thane stated. "Do not resist and you will not be harmed." Watson stood up from her microscope and removed her lab coat. "I don't suppose I have much choice in the matter." She didn't struggle as the soldiers escorted her to their ship. She asked no questions about where they were going or what they wanted. Instead, she observed everything around her with the same scientific attention she had given her microscope. Once aboard the ship, Thane had her placed in a holding cell designed for captured specimens. The walls were transparent, allowing constant observation, and the basic life support systems could be adjusted for different atmospheric requirements. "Comfortable enough?" Thane asked through the communication system. Watson looked around the cell, testing the walls and examining the ventilation system. "Functional," she replied. "Your technology is impressive. The materials are something I've never seen before." She wasn't cowering in the corner or pounding on the walls. She was analyzing her prison like a scientist studying a new discovery. As the ship lifted away from Earth and headed for the outer system, Thane monitored the planet's communication networks. This was always the most interesting part. Some species went completely silent, paralyzed by fear. Others erupted into chaos and panic. A few tried to mount immediate but hopeless defenses. Earth did something different. For the first few hours, human communications continued normally. News broadcasts, commercial transmissions, civilian internet traffic all proceeded as if nothing had happened. But then, gradually, things began to change. Military frequencies across the planet suddenly became much more active. Government communications increased dramatically. But civilian channels didn't fill with panic broadcasts or emergency announcements. Instead, they began going quiet in a coordinated fashion. "Sir," reported Lieutenant Vera, "we're seeing unusual patterns in their global communications." Thane studied the data streams flowing across his screens. Every major nation on Earth was mobilizing their military forces, but they were doing it quietly. No public announcements, no visible panic, just smooth and efficient preparation for something. "It's like they've done this before," Marcus observed from his station. That was impossible. Earth's first contact with alien life was supposed to be happening right now, in the form of Dr. Watson's capture. But the planet's response suggested they had contingency plans already in place. In her cell, Watson sat quietly on the simple bench, her hands folded in her lap. But her eyes never stopped moving, cataloging every detail of the alien technology surrounding her. She wasn't just a prisoner anymore. She was a scientist with access to the greatest discovery in human history. And somewhere below them, Earth was waking up. The interrogation room was cold and filled with strange blue light that hurt Emily's eyes. She sat in a chair that seemed to adjust itself to her body, while Commander Thane and his science officer stood across from her. The alien technology hummed quietly around them, making sounds she had never heard before. "Your name is Dr. Emily Watson," Thane stated, reading from a glowing display. "You study creatures that live in the deep ocean." Emily nodded. "That's correct." "Tell us about your military forces," ordered Lieutenant Vera, the science officer. "How many ships does your species possess?" Emily almost laughed. "Ships. We have many ships, but they're not what you think. Most are for fishing or moving cargo across our oceans. Our space program has maybe a dozen active vessels, and they're barely capable of reaching our own moon." Thane and Vera exchanged glances. This matched their intelligence reports. Earth appeared to be a primitive world with no real space-based defenses. "What about your weapons?" Vera continued. "We have many weapons," Emily replied honestly. "But they're designed for fighting each other, not visitors from space. Chemical explosives, projectile weapons, some energy-based systems. Nothing that could threaten ships like yours." The aliens seemed satisfied with these answers. Emily watched them carefully, noting how they relaxed when she described Earth's limited capabilities. They believed they faced a weak opponent. But Emily knew something they didn't. She had seen the news reports before her capture. Strange lights in the sky over major cities. Military bases going to high alert. Her own government had issued quiet instructions to key personnel about unusual celestial events. Earth had been preparing for this possibility for decades. While the interrogation continued, massive changes were happening on the planet below. In secret bunkers around the world, plans that had been theoretical exercises became urgent reality. The capture of Dr. Watson had triggered protocols that most humans didn't even know existed. In Washington, General Robert Hayes stood in a war room deep beneath the Pentagon. Maps of the world covered every wall, but now they showed something new. Red lines connected major industrial centers, military bases, and research facilities. The entire planet was being reorganized for a single purpose. "How long until full mobilization?" Hayes asked his aide. 72 hours for basic readiness. 2 weeks for complete integration," came the reply. Hayes nodded grimly. They had hoped this day would never come, but they had prepared for it anyway. Every major nation had signed secret agreements. Ancient enemies had promised to share resources and intelligence if humanity faced extinction from outside threats. In Moscow, Beijing, London, and dozens of other capitals, similar scenes were playing out. Military forces were being repositioned. Factories were switching to wartime production. Scientists were being moved to secure locations where they could work without interruption. But the most important changes were happening in places the aliens couldn't see. Deep underground, in facilities that didn't appear on any maps, humanity's greatest secret projects were beginning to activate. Back on the alien ship, Emily continued answering questions while carefully asking some of her own. Each response from her captors gave her more information about their technology and capabilities. She learned that their ships used something called quantum drives for faster-than-light travel. Their weapons could destroy entire cities from orbit. Their sensors could detect life forms from incredible distances. "Your species interests us," Thane told her during one session. "You seem more adaptable than most primitive civilizations." "Adaptable is a good word for humans," Emily agreed. "We've had to be. Our planet has tried to kill us many times. Ice ages, volcanic eruptions, asteroid impacts, plagues that wiped out huge portions of our population. But we always survived. Yet you remain divided into competing nations, Vera observed. Your species fights constant wars with itself. Emily smiled. That's true. We do fight each other regularly. But we have a saying on Earth, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. When something threatens all of humanity, we tend to put our differences aside. The aliens didn't seem to understand the significance of this statement. They had conquered other worlds where different groups continued fighting each other even during the invasion. They expected humans to behave the same way. But Earth was different. As hours passed, the planet's communications networks showed an unprecedented level of cooperation. Resources flowed freely across borders. Military units from different countries began training together. Scientists shared research that had been classified secrets for decades. In Australia, Dr. Michael Chen worked frantically in a laboratory hidden beneath the desert. He had spent 15 years developing theoretical propulsion systems that everyone said were impossible. Now he had unlimited funding and a team of the world's best engineers helping him make them real. In Germany, Dr. Sarah Mitchell led a team working on energy weapons based on principles they had learned from studying meteorites. The rocks from space had contained materials that shouldn't exist according to human science. Now they were learning to reproduce those materials. Similar projects were activating across the planet. Humanity was pulling together resources and knowledge that had been scattered across hundreds of different programs. They were becoming something they had never been before, truly united. Emily could see the confusion growing in her captors' faces as they monitored Earth's communications. The planet wasn't behaving like other worlds they had conquered. There was no panic, no chaos, no desperate attempts to negotiate. Instead, there was something much more dangerous: organized preparation. "Commander," she said during one interrogation session, "may I ask you something?" Thane nodded, curious about what she might want to know. In all the worlds you've conquered, how many had spent centuries learning to fight wars against themselves? The question seemed to puzzle him. Most species fight among themselves. It makes conquest easier. Emily's smile was cold. No, Commander. Most species fight for territory or resources. Humans fight for practice. The Dominion invasion fleet dropped out of hyperspace like a storm of metal and fire. 200 warships, each one capable of destroying a city, spread across space in perfect formation. Admiral Karath stood on the bridge of his flagship, expecting to see a broken planet begging for mercy. Instead, he found Earth bristling with weapons. "What is that?" demanded Captain Rex, staring at the tactical display in disbelief. Space around Earth looked like a metallic maze. Thousands of objects orbited the planet in carefully planned patterns. Some were clearly weapons platforms, their angular shapes designed for destruction. Others appeared to be converted civilian structures, space stations, mining platforms, even old satellites that had been fitted with explosive charges. "Sir, we're detecting over 15,000 separate objects," reported the sensor officer. "Most are armed." Admiral Karath had conquered 12 worlds in his career. None had ever managed to build significant orbital defenses in just 2 weeks. It should have been impossible. "Begin attack formation," he ordered. "Target the largest platforms first." But as his ships moved forward, something unexpected happened. The human defenses didn't wait to be attacked. They struck first. Streams of projectiles erupted from the orbital platforms. Not energy beams or exotic weapons, but simple kinetic rounds fired at incredible speeds. Chunks of metal and rock accelerated to a significant fraction of light speed, turning space debris into devastating ammunition. Evasive maneuvers. Karath shouted as his flagship shuddered under impact. The human strategy made no sense by conventional military standards. They were using cargo haulers as missile platforms, mining equipment as railguns, and communication satellites as targeting systems. It was crude, inefficient, and absolutely deadly. 3 Dominion destroyers exploded in the first 30 seconds of combat. Their shields were designed to stop sophisticated energy weapons, not clouds of high-velocity scrap metal fired from jury-rigged mining equipment. On the alien command ship holding Emily, alarms screamed through the corridors. Commander Thane rushed to his bridge, where his crew was frantically trying to understand what they were seeing on their sensors. "The humans have launched some kind of counterattack," reported Lieutenant Vera. "But sir, our ships are nowhere near their planet." Thane studied the tactical display with growing horror. Red warning indicators were appearing throughout Dominion space. Human ships were attacking targets 3 star systems away from Earth. "How is this possible?" he whispered. In her cell, Emily Watson sat calmly despite the chaos around her. She had been expecting this moment. Through the transparent walls of her prison, she could see alien crew members running past in obvious panic. "Dr. Watson," came Thane's voice through the communication system. "Your people are attacking our colonies. How did they get ships to our territory so quickly?" Emily looked up at the speaker with a patient expression. "Commander, did you really think that in 2 weeks we only built orbital defenses around Earth?" The truth was more complex than the aliens could have imagined. Humanity hadn't just prepared to defend their home world. They had prepared to take the war to their enemies. Dr. Michael Chen's propulsion experiments had succeeded beyond all expectations. His teams hadn't just created faster ships. They had created ships that could use the enemy's own faster-than-light communication signals as navigation beacons. Every message the Dominion sent back to their home worlds gave the humans another target to attack. "You see," Emily continued, "you made a critical error in your intelligence gathering. You observed our current technology and assumed that represented our capabilities. But humans don't just use what we have. We build what we need." Captain James Mitchell commanded the human strike force that had appeared in the Chronos system. His ships were strange hybrid vessels that shouldn't have been able to function. Fusion reactors bolted to cargo hulls. Asteroid mining lasers rewired for combat. Navigation computers running on modified gaming software. "Target their supply depots," Mitchell ordered over the communication system. "Remember, we're not here to hold territory. We're here to break things." The human approach to warfare confused the Dominion defenders completely. Instead of trying to capture strategic locations, the humans destroyed everything that supported military operations. Food production facilities, fuel refineries, communication relays, repair stations, all became legitimate targets. "They're not fighting to win," observed Colonel Vex, watching the tactical reports flood in. "They're fighting to cripple us." Admiral Karath was learning the same lesson in Earth orbit. His massive fleet was designed to overwhelm planetary defenses through superior firepower and technology. But the humans weren't fighting that kind of battle. They were using every piece of space debris as a weapon, every satellite as a potential bomb. When Dominion forces moved to attack one orbital platform, 3 others would detonate simultaneously, filling space with high-velocity fragments that could punch through military armor. When they tried to establish safe corridors for their attack ships, the humans would ram converted cargo vessels into their formations. "They're trading one ship for 3 of ours," reported Captain Rex. "And they seem to consider that a victory." It was a victory from the human perspective. Every Dominion ship destroyed was one less weapon threatening Earth. Every supply depot eliminated meant fewer resources for the invasion. Every communication station destroyed meant less coordination between enemy forces. Dr. Sarah Mitchell's energy weapons were proving equally effective. Her teams had learned to manufacture materials that shouldn't exist, creating ammunition that could penetrate Dominion shields. The weapons themselves looked like enlarged versions of industrial cutting tools, but they could slice through alien armor like paper. In her cell, Emily watched the confusion and fear growing among her captors. Commander Thane appeared at her door, his usual calm confidence replaced by barely controlled panic. "Your species is destroying everything," he said accusingly. Emily nodded thoughtfully. "We call it total war, Commander. When our survival is at stake, everything becomes a legitimate target. Your mistake was thinking we would fight fair." 6 months after the first battle, Admiral Karath stood in the ruins of his command center, staring at reports that made no sense. The Dominion Empire, which had ruled dozens of star systems for 3,000 years, was falling apart. And it was all because of one primitive planet that should have surrendered in days. "Sir, we've lost contact with the Vega colonies," reported his communications officer, a young alien named Derek who had once been eager for war. Now Derek's hands shook as he delivered each new piece of bad news. Karath closed his eyes. The Vega system had been one of their strongest military bases. It had orbital defense platforms, 3 full battle fleets, and enough firepower to destroy 100 worlds. 2 weeks ago, it had simply gone silent. "What's the status of our supply lines?" Karath asked, though he already knew the answer would be terrible. 70% disrupted, sir," came the reply. "The humans keep targeting our cargo ships and fuel depots. They're not trying to capture anything. They just destroy it and move on." This was the problem that was driving Karath insane. Humans fought like no species the Dominion had ever encountered. They didn't want territory or resources or slaves. They just wanted to break things until their enemies couldn't fight anymore. Captain James Mitchell had become the most feared name in Dominion space. His fleet appeared without warning, destroyed everything of military value, then vanished before reinforcements could arrive. His ships looked like they had been built in a scrapyard, but they were deadly effective. "Target the fuel processing station," Mitchell ordered as his task force approached another Dominion outpost. His flagship was a converted mining vessel that had been fitted with weapons that shouldn't work but somehow did. The Dominion defenders tried their standard tactics. Energy shields at full power, defensive formations, disciplined fire patterns designed to maximize their technological advantages. But human tactics made their technology irrelevant. Instead of engaging the defenders directly, Mitchell's ships launched clouds of small objects that looked like space junk. The Dominion sensors dismissed them as debris until they started exploding. Each small device contained just enough explosive to damage one specific system. Shields failed, sensors went blind, weapons overloaded. While the defenders dealt with the chaos, human boarding parties attacked. But these weren't soldiers trying to capture the station. They were engineers with explosives, systematically destroying everything that made the outpost useful. "They're not taking prisoners," reported the station commander before his transmission cut off permanently. That was another thing that confused the Dominion forces. Humans rarely took prisoners, but they also rarely killed defeated enemies. Instead, they destroyed military equipment and left the aliens stranded on their own worlds with no way to continue fighting. Back on Commander Thane's ship, the situation was getting desperate. The vessel that had once been part of a mighty invasion fleet was now hiding in deep space, afraid to return home because human raiders controlled most of the major space routes. "Dr. Watson," Thane said as he entered her cell. The alien commander looked older now, his confidence replaced by exhaustion and fear. Emily looked up from the book she was reading. The aliens had given her access to their database, hoping she might provide information about human weaknesses. Instead, she had spent months learning about Dominion technology and military doctrine. "How are your people doing this?" Thane asked for the 100th time. "We have superior ships, better weapons, advanced technology. How are you destroying an empire that has existed for millennia?" Emily closed her book and looked at him with something almost like pity. "Commander, you keep asking the wrong question. You want to know how we're winning battles. But that's not what's happening." She stood and walked to the transparent wall of her cell. Through the ship's viewing ports, space looked empty and cold. No friendly vessels, no supply ships, no reinforcements. "We're not trying to win battles," Emily continued. "We're trying to end your ability to fight battles. Every fuel depot we destroy means your ships can't refuel. Every communication station we eliminate means you can't coordinate with each other. Every supply ship we sink means your soldiers don't eat." This was the strategy that Dr. Michael Chen and his team had developed. They called it systemic warfare. Instead of fighting enemy armies, they fought enemy infrastructure. Instead of capturing territory, they eliminated the resources that made military operations possible. The results were visible throughout Dominion space. Mighty battle fleets sat powerless in orbit around their home worlds, unable to travel because they had no fuel. Advanced weapons platforms stood silent because they had no ammunition. Sophisticated command centers operated in isolation because they had no communications. "Your empire was built on the assumption that you would always have superior technology," Emily explained. "But technology requires resources, maintenance, and supply chains. We didn't need to build better ships. We just needed to break the systems that keep your ships running." Lieutenant Vera appeared at the cell entrance, her usual scientific curiosity replaced by desperate urgency. "Sir, we're receiving surrender requests from 17 different systems. They're asking for terms." Thane stared at her in disbelief. "Surrender requests? From our own colonies? They're running out of food, sir. The humans have been targeting agricultural shipments and processing facilities. Some worlds are facing starvation." Emily nodded sadly. "That's what happens in total war, Commander. Everything becomes a target because everything supports the war effort. Your people are learning what humans discovered long ago. Modern civilization is very fragile when someone starts breaking the right pieces." The irony was not lost on her. The Dominion had conquered dozens of worlds by demonstrating their overwhelming technological superiority. Now they were being defeated by opponents who understood that technology was only as strong as the systems that supported it. "We could have been allies," Emily said quietly. "We could have shared knowledge, explored the galaxy together, built something better than either of our species could create alone." Thane looked at her with haunted eyes. "And now? Now you're learning why humans survived every disaster our planet could throw at us. We don't just adapt to threats. We eliminate them completely." 18 months after the war began, Commander Thane knelt in the ruins of what had once been the greatest military command center in Dominion space. The massive complex on the planet Xerion had coordinated attacks across dozens of star systems. Now it was nothing but twisted metal and broken stone, with human soldiers standing guard over the wreckage. Emily Watson walked through the debris, no longer a prisoner but something far more dangerous, a teacher. She wore simple human clothes now, and her hands were free for the first time since her capture. Behind her followed Admiral Rebecca Stone, the woman who had led humanity's final assault on the Dominion's last stronghold. "The war is over, Commander Thane," Admiral Stone announced in a voice that carried no hatred, only tired authority. "Your government has agreed to complete withdrawal to your core systems. All military operations against human worlds will cease immediately." Thane looked up at the two women with eyes that held no fight left in them. Around him, other Dominion officers sat in similar defeat. These were beings who had once commanded fleets capable of destroying entire planets. Now they looked like lost children. "How?" Thane whispered, the question that had haunted him for months finally escaping his lips. "How did you do this to us?" Emily knelt down beside him, bringing herself to his eye level. "You want to understand what happened here? Then let me tell you a story about my species, Commander." She gestured to the ruins around them. 50,000 years ago, humans lived in small groups, hunting animals and gathering plants. We had no technology beyond sharpened stones and wooden spears. We should have been easy prey for the big predators that shared our world. Admiral Stone listened quietly as Emily began the lesson that would define the relationship between their species for generations to come. "But we had something those predators didn't expect," Emily continued. "When a lion attacked one human, all the humans in the area would work together to kill that lion. When winter came and food became scarce, we shared what we had so everyone could survive. When disease struck our communities, we cared for the sick instead of abandoning them." Thane frowned, not understanding where this story was leading. "The lion was bigger and stronger than any human," Emily explained. "The winter was colder than any human could endure alone. The diseases were deadlier than our primitive medicine could cure. But we survived them all, and eventually we thrived." She stood up and walked to a viewing window that looked out over the devastated command center. In the distance, human ships could be seen unloading supplies, not weapons or troops but food, medical equipment and construction materials. "You studied our technology and our governments," Emily said without turning around. "You analyzed our weapons and our military forces. But you never bothered to learn what we actually are." "And what are you?" Thane asked, though he was beginning to suspect the answer would terrify him. Emily turned back to face him, and her expression was not cruel or angry. It was patient, like a teacher explaining something important to a slow student. "We are the species that survived everything our planet could throw at us. Ice ages that should have killed us. Volcanic eruptions that blocked out the sun for years. Asteroid impacts that destroyed most life on Earth. Plagues that killed 90% of our population. Wars that lasted generations and destroyed entire civilizations." Admiral Stone stepped forward. "Each time we learned. Each disaster made us stronger. Each enemy taught us new ways to fight." The truth was becoming clear to Thane, though he wished it weren't. The Dominion hadn't been fighting a primitive species that happened to get lucky. They had been fighting the survivors of 10,000 disasters, each one more devastating than anything the Dominion had ever faced. "Your empire conquered worlds by demonstrating superior technology," Emily continued. "But humans don't surrender just because someone has better weapons. We've been outgunned in every major conflict in our history. We learned to win by being smarter, more determined, and more willing to sacrifice everything for survival." Through the broken windows, alien civilians could be seen walking freely among human soldiers. There were no prison camps, no mass executions, no enslaved populations. The humans had destroyed the Dominion's ability to make war, but they were already helping to rebuild civilian infrastructure. "We could have wiped out your species completely," Admiral Stone said matter-of-factly. "We had the capability once we captured your supply networks. But that's not who we are." She gestured toward the relief operations visible outside. "We fight to survive, not to conquer. Now that you're no longer a threat, you become potential allies instead of enemies." Thane stared at the scene in amazement. Throughout Dominion space, similar operations were underway. Human engineers were repairing civilian infrastructure while human doctors treated alien patients. The same species that had waged total war was now providing humanitarian aid. "I don't understand," Thane admitted. "If you can show mercy, why did you destroy everything we built?" Emily's expression grew sad. "Because you gave us no choice. You came to our world not as explorers or traders but as conquerors. You took one of our people as a specimen for study before destroying our civilization. She paused, letting the weight of that statement settle over him. The first human you captured was supposed to be the beginning of our extinction. Instead, she became your teacher. Every question you asked taught us about your technology. Every test you performed showed us your capabilities. Every moment you held her prisoner proved that you saw us as things to be studied rather than people to be respected. Thane finally understood the full magnitude of his species' error. They had captured a scientist, someone trained to observe and learn from everything around her. Then they had given her months to study their most advanced technology while revealing their strategic capabilities and military doctrine. You turned our greatest strength against us, he said quietly. No, Commander, Emily replied. We turned your greatest weakness against you. You assumed that superior technology meant automatic victory. But humans learned long ago that wars aren't won by the side with the best weapons. They're won by the side that's most willing to do whatever it takes to survive. As human and alien medical teams worked together to treat injured Dominion soldiers, Emily delivered the final lesson. We gave you every opportunity to approach us peacefully. We would have welcomed trade, cultural exchange, shared scientific research. We could have been the best allies your empire ever had. She looked directly into Thane's eyes. Instead, you chose to make us your enemies. And now you've learned why that was the last mistake your empire will ever make. The Dominion had fallen not because humans were stronger or smarter or more advanced. It had fallen because humans were exactly what their own history had made them. A species that simply refused to die quietly. As the sun set over the ruins of the command center, reconstruction had already begun. But the lesson would never be forgotten. Throughout the galaxy, other species would learn what the Dominion had discovered too late. Humanity's greatest weapon was not their technology or their numbers.